started a stopwatch on me. I don't know what that means.
It's for me.
Oh. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Allison. I'm an alcoholic.
I'm Diane Allison. I'm a grateful member of the Worldwide Fellowship of Al-Anon.
My sobriety date's February the 12th, 1990, and my home group is the Design for Living in Nashville, Tennessee. We meet on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. If you're ever in the Nashville area, we'd like to have you come visit us. Again, thanks to Jimmy and Mary Beth and everybody else that's put this weekend together. It's a great place, a great event. Can't wait to hear the other speakers today. Thank you so much for all your love and hospitality. Thanks for Roger over there and Mike for recording this. These people record our history. I hope you'll support them to keep them coming. And thanks to all of you for showing up this morning to be the guinea pig to hear the first time we've ever done a 3-hour workshop before. First thing we want to do is a disclaimer for anybody that's out there that doesn't know any better. We're not experts on anything. The only thing I was fearless and thorough about was burning my life to the ground, so that's about the only thing I'm an expert on. But we have some experience with what to do and what not to do. We want to share some of that today. We have hashed this over and tried to prepare for it in every way possible. And finally, we just decided to say, hey, God, just show us what we're supposed to do today. And hopefully we can share something today that helps somebody. I didn't pay any attention to the traditions for probably the first year or so I was sober. I was, my life was such a mess that I was taking the steps with my sponsor and trying to get my own life in order. And I'd hear the traditions read, and I'd think, well, that's great, that's good stuff, I suppose. But they really didn't mean anything to me. They weren't really that important because I was trying to get my life together through the 12 steps. But I was a member of my home group at the time, the Full Moon Group. Our intergroup rep just came to the meeting one time and said, hey, my husband and I are moving to Texas. We're leaving next week. And so they didn't have an election or anything. They just pointed to me and said, you're our intergroup rep. And so I start going to the intergroup meetings every month. And I'd been to maybe 2 or 3, and I'm just starting to figure out what's going on, in intergroup. And they had a meeting on the proposed budget for the next year. And some of you laughing already. You've done that too. So, well, at any rate, they presented the budget. The central office manager presented the budget for the following year. And there were several people that started asking questions about the budget. And one thing led to another about, well, where are we getting the income to do this? And somebody thought literature sales was not the way to do it. And the next thing I know, there's like 40 people in that room of seemingly intelligent beings. And in just a matter of a few heated comments, they were ready to fire the central office manager because they didn't think she was doing a good enough job, which she did a wonderful job. And there was a motion that somebody made to have a complete audit of central office. And it passed almost unanimously. And I think I would dare say most of the people in that room didn't even know what an audit was, or did they know that it cost money to do that? I mean, it was just like, boom, the place just came unhinged. And it scared me. Because, they were ready to disband and shut central office down, and we were just talking about the budget for the next year, And I went home, and I was kind of in shock about it because I was a newcomer. I didn't, it just kind of freaked me out because I thought we're all supposed to be unified and sing Kumbaya here. It'd be wonderful. And that's the first time I'd ever seen that everybody just had a complete meltdown. And several days later, I got a letter in the mail from a guy named Don R., who had been the central office manager in the past. And he had heard about the meeting, and he wrote a letter to everybody that was on the intergroup committee and said, these are the traditions that we might ought to go by to resolve this. And it was the first time I'd ever seen somebody make sense out of all that. And that's when I realized that we have to have this to stay together. I know a lot of you a lot more well-versed than I am about the history, but, you know, AA was coming apart at the seams by itself, and Bill wrote the 12 traditions to try to hold us together. And the thing about the traditions, I found out, you know, there's no AA police that enforces the traditions, but if I find that if AA doesn't do it, that we'll fall apart. I'm convinced that AA would never fall apart by external causes. I don't think anything on the outside could destroy AA. It can only be destroyed from within to ourselves. So that's where the traditions became really vital, and I started studying them then. And then as I went on, I realized that those could be could apply to our relationship as well. And what we're going to try to do today, there's several people that have done relationship workshops in the past that we really paid attention to. Dick and Peggy Martin were two, and Dave and Polly Pistol did a lot of that kind of stuff, and Dave's passed on now. So we're going to try to adapt the traditions as we go along to how it is in relationships and how that can benefit us and keep us together. So that's kind of what we're going to try to do today. We're probably going to talk about all 12 traditions. We kind of split them up, but some of them we're probably going to talk more about and some a little bit less. We're just kind of going to see how this kind of goes. How are we going to do the question answer thing? We're going to do that at the end.
After each section, I think.
Okay. So, and the other thing, you know, we didn't know what kind of format we were going to do on this. I told Jimmy last night that I decided that we do 3 15-minute sessions with 45-minute breaks. And Jimmy suggested that we kind of flip that around. So that's what we're going to try to do. And one thing before I turn this over to Diane, one of the reasons why we need the traditions, somebody sent me this letter. Some of you may have seen this. This is a letter from December the 5th of 1941, and up at the top it says, Alcoholics Anonymous, Post Office Box 507, Hollywood Station, Hollywood, California. And this is to Irma Lavoni. Dear Ms. Lavoni, at a meeting of the Executive Committee of the Los Angeles Group of Alcoholics Anonymous held on December 4th, 1941, it was decided that your attendance at group meetings was no longer desired until certain explanations and plans for the future were made to the satisfaction of this committee. This action has been taken for reasons which should be most apparent to you. It was decided that, should you desire, you may appear before members of this committee and state your attitude. This opportunity will be afforded you between now and December 15th, 1941. If you may communicate with us at the above address by that date. In case you do not wish to appear, we shall consider the matter closed and that your membership is terminated. Alcoholics Anonymous Los Angeles Group. And it was signed by 6 people. And they weren't all men. I'll just leave it at that. So that's one of the reasons why we have the tradition. So we're going to try to see how those apply to our lives today.
Thanks, Mike. And a couple of things, too, is that, God, that's a little loud. You know, as I say, trying to prepare for this, we've done it like in an hour before, and to stretch it out, there's a few things. I do want to give credit where it's due to those people that have gone before us and done so many traditions, workshops like this. And, you know, we've attended those, taken notes. We've got all their stuff on it and read it. And what we have done, it's been several things. Mary Pearl did a thing on the relationships, and she's a member of Al-Anon. And we studied those as a group. We've studied it with a couples group, the traditions. We've studied it separately with an Al-Anon group. And when I first came in, it was the going to meetings. One of my meetings that I had on Friday nights was a book study, and we did the 12 traditions, 12 steps and 12 traditions. This is before some of the other literature was out. And as we started reading through that book, and that was one of my meetings I didn't miss, we started on the traditions. And that's when I found out how to apply the traditions to my family. I just thought they were primarily for the group, not for us outside of the meeting. And having that experience, strength, and hope in that meeting really changed a lot of the way that we dealt with our children, of course, with the help of many sponsors and that we had, and the groups and readings and stuff. We've gotten involved and try to use the traditions in all our affairs. What we're going to do today is start out with, we're probably going to hit 4 traditions and then break and come back and do 4. And also before we break, if there's any questions or something, briefly, we're going to have the mic over here in front of this projector or behind the projector for you to ask any questions regarding those 4. If not, just wait till the end, when we finish, and you can ask those too at any time. But you might want to just make notes and stuff, so we don't want to take up a lot of dead space and people coming up to the mic and all, and line up if you have questions. So with that, I'm assigned to do the first tradition, and what we've done is we've written down the Al-Anon and the AA traditions, and also from either Dick and Peggy or Polly and Dave's or Mary Pearl's, the relationship one, how we apply that too. So tradition 1 states our common welfare in AA comes first. Personal recovery depends on AA unity. In Al-Anon, our first tradition is our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends on unity. And in the relationship, our common welfare comes first. A healthy relationship depends upon unity. And Al-Anon, we have this 12 traditions illustrated pamphlet, and I'm going to just read a couple of sentences from it that apply pretty much to the meetings at first, but they also, then I can apply them to my life. And it says, the very first words of Tradition 1 declare our unity of purpose. We are bound together in a common concern. And it goes down to say, as we grow in serenity and spirituality, our experience in both example and service can be a beacon of hope to others. And then it goes on to say, when the group is unified in purpose, with its eyes on the welfare of all, each individual in that group can be best helped. In the same way, each individual can be of greatest service to others when he or she is harmoniously and unified in spirit, observing the 12th step suggestion to practice these principles in all our affairs. And then the last thing I'll read is, it is our love for one another and our devotion to the welfare of each member that determines the strength of our unity. And so that, for me, just started out with, the way I grew up was not unified. I mean, it was in a sense, but we had all different traditions in our family. And you probably did too. It was all for one for all. You take care of everybody. You're responsible for everybody. Those things. Let's get organized. You're responsible, it's your blame or whatever. And those traditions that I grew up with, thinking they were healthy, I thought I grew up in a really healthy family. Until I came here, did I find and hear those things that I was brought up with that really weren't. I was carrying on just that alcoholic behavior cycle. And, but I did grow up with some good ones. My dad really enforced, the thing about how important family is. And that we love each other and take care of each other. We always took trips together. We were unified in that way. There were certain specific jobs that we had growing up that, you didn't vary from, really. I had to think of, how others, it was always, do what you think is best, but remember there's other people that are going to maybe be hurt or harmed or whatever. And so there was a little conscience in there you had to put in. Also, my parents were always right. We were not. And they never apologized or anything. It was mostly my dad was in that, never made a mistake, and we couldn't dispute anything. Never heard an apology from them. Also, we always prayed before meals. That was something that was important. We were raised in the church and stuff, and so my mom, we did get those good virtues that were brought out. Kids were seen, not heard, kind of thing. And but then once we got in the program, we were fortunate enough that Alateen was starting up in the Nashville area. In a couple of my meetings, we actually started Alateen too, so that those of us, an Ala kid, that we could be a part, the kids, we could all go to meetings together. Mike would go to AA, I would go to Al-Anon, and the kids would be either in child care or Alateen or Ala kid. So in that unified thing, we grew up. We had to start changing some things. There were things that we carried on, but they were always different. It was always in our household, you know, the parents were the ones that were responsible for everything. We made the decisions. We didn't include the kids in on most of it. We just told them what we were going to do. And that was not, well, that's something we had to change. And once we got into doing these traditions and stuff. But as far as the common welfare of the whole, of the kids, anybody, my siblings, everything that was involved, I had to start consulting them, having communication with them, being flexible with what I did and how we made decisions in the family. I had to learn to just include them in my decision making. When they were old enough to be a part of that. It says, personal recovery depends on unity. And so for that, I was responsible for my recovery in that I had to be sure, and I had to work the steps. I think it's best to know the steps before we go into the traditions, because I really had to know me and understand what my stuff was. And so I'm responsible for my recovery in the relationship. And as Mike is responsible for his, and the kids are responsible for theirs. It was nice that we were all in program in that we all kind of spoke the same language. And so most everything that we did was, involving them and including them in on some decision making and stuff. There was a lot of this thing, this unity thing, I've noticed as I was going through all of this and writing about it, it's carried on through all the traditions. Unity is part of, I think, all the traditions, and a lot of the same tools that we get in the program are carried throughout all 12 traditions for me. It was, the biggest one is, as far as is the communication. I had to change that and really be able to start listening to my children and communicate with them and see how they felt about certain things and include them in that. And then as a group we would get together and to make decisions together. And that for me brought us together, just them being a part of the decision making in our depending on the situation and everything. There was a lot of things as far as regarding, when I came in, everything I did pretty much was ruled by fear. It was because I was afraid the money would run out, the job would stop, we would divorce, or the kids, something would happen to them. They'd get involved in drugs and alcohol. Just all this fear made a lot of my decisions. And I had to start removing that and take away that fear. And I asked my higher power to take away that fear, because that really was hard for me, because I was doing so many things, and it wasn't unifying the family or anything. It was, not acting out of love, but acting out of fear. And so for the common welfare of our coupleship, common welfare of the family, I had to start relying on higher power And I had one coming in. I did have a higher power, but he was not the higher power of my understanding today. He was that one that was judging everything I did and making check marks and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, I had to rely on that higher power to guide me in as far as being a good mom or being a good wife or sister, whatever it was, just to start changing those things so that we could have the unity and love in our coupleship, in our family and all. And I think that's probably, I'm going to get Mike, I should say. Yeah, I think that's going to pass it on to Mike. We're just going to, if you want to comment on that or not.
What she said was, no, I'm just kidding. When my New York friend Tommy comes to Tennessee, he always talks at a meeting, and our friend Darren stands up and says, what he said was, the Southern drawl. The most important thing I can do, first off, to honor tradition one is to stay sober in AA. If I don't stay sober, I'm not worried about any unity at all, anywhere. I'm still out there by myself, wrapped up in myself. So that's the main thing I can do. And in order for us to stay unified, it takes a lot of communication. And we've been married 48 years, and we're still having to work on that. I thought at some point in time, after some period of time of sobriety or some years of marriage, we got this. Well, I don't think we've got this yet. It's something we still practice. A good example is our communication working, trying to put this workshop together. We both had different ideas about how to do it. And it's uncomfortable to have those conversations sometimes, but the only way that we can be unified is to communicate stuff, and some of that stuff's not easy sometimes. One thing about staying unified is practice Rule 62. Don't take myself too damn serious. We can get wrapped up in little petty stuff sometimes that doesn't really mean anything. It's the big picture. I got to remember that we're a team, and we're individuals, but when we're unified, we express God's love more as a couple than we do as individuals. And I always have to remember that. And the thing about unity too that was real important for us early on, when I got sober, our kids were 8 and 11. They're 41 and 45 now. And we have a grandson that's 23 now. But in the early part of recovery, our sons were approaching teenage years, and we were starting to have a lot of problems with them. And what we found out really quickly, that if we have unity, we could survive that a whole lot better. Because I don't know about you, when I was a teenager, I would go to one parent and try to get one thing, and then I'd work the other one for something else. And when we were unified, our family did a whole lot better. Let's see, we'll move on to tradition 2. And this is one of the few traditions that AA and Al-Anon actually have word for word. We agree on this. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. And in our relationship, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself to us. Both partners are equal, and each is a trusted servant, they do not govern. We try our best to put God in the center of our lives, and we have very different paths of getting there, it seems like, but I think we go to the same goal. Diane has always had a strong religious faith and has practiced her religion religiously. And I'm a guy, I said last night when I came here, I was just a savage because I went to church when I was a kid, and when I left to go away to college, I never went to church anymore. And then I came back, and Diane and I, when we got married, this really nice priest counseled us, and he married us, and I went to church for a while, and then I stopped going, and then my alcoholism worsened, and I was doing a bunch of things that I didn't think God would approve of anyway. And so I was just a just a savage, really. And Diane, throughout all that, maintained her church life. And by the way, I'm not saying anything bad about churches here. It saddens me every time I hear people bash churches, and you may have a good reason to bash a church you don't like, but I don't think that serves any purpose. The church never did anything wrong. I just could never hear the message there. I never got the message there. And it gives, book said it gives courage and directions to millions, but I'm just not one of those guys. You know, I found God in AA. God became real to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I first got sober, Diane was encouraging me to go to church with her, and several other people were too. And I tried, and I just didn't fit in there. And at some point in time, we realized that we had our own paths. And the good thing about our relationship is that I allow her and encourage her to do everything she wants to do with her church life. And in turn, she encourages me to do everything that I do in my spiritual life, and it works for us because I think we're on the same path. We're going in the same direction. Now, we've tried different things. We heard other couples say that they prayed together out loud every morning, and so we thought we'd try to do that. And it seemed like we were trying to out-pray the other one. So we just stopped doing that. But we say our prayers together a lot, but it's not together. And the other thing is, in this tradition, we're equal partners. Neither one of us governs. And if one of us decides to be in charge, all that does is lead to resentments and another four-step. You know, and I don't ever want to have to do that. You know, I'm supposed to just add to the relationship. Page 134 says, in the beginning of it, it says, they are servants. Theirs is sometimes the thankless privilege of doing the group's chores. The committee gives no spiritual advice, judges no one's conduct, issues no orders. And so they make the belated discovery that they are really servants, not senators. And so if I'm going to be a trusted servant to Diane, I've got to be a person of trust. You know, a trusted servant means that I want to give. It's not like, oh, I've got these chores I got to do all the time, the stuff I got to do. I get to do those things. Like I get to come to AA. And to be a trusted servant, I have to build trust with this woman. And I tore down a lot of trust with her. A lot. And I made amends the best I can for the past that I did. But every day I'm either building trust or I'm tearing it down. You know, and some days I do a better job than that than others. But I have to be, in order to be a trusted servant, I have to be a person of trust. Somebody said if you want to build self-esteem, just do esteemable things. You got anything you want to say about tradition too?
Just the one thing that I think is the higher power, God, however you might call your spirit or whatever, I think both of us realize that we have, as Mike said, we have the same God, but we go about it in different ways. And I think as long as that we are, and even with my children, I had to let them have their own higher power, let them find their way and not enforce when they were young and growing up, I brought them through church and all that, but I let them find their own path on that spiritual. And my children today have totally different concept of their higher power, spirit, whatever it is. And, you know, I honor that with them. You know, it says everyone has a loving God as he may express himself. And for me, I believe my higher power, God has no grandchildren. I believe my higher power, no matter what they choose, is the same. We just choose to call it differently. But I don't judge theirs. They don't judge mine. We allow each other to have our own spiritual path. And I think that's what's really important is that I used to say he needed to go to church with me. He needed to go. I knew he could be healed or whatever. And that was, just not the case. And I had to find that out the hard way about all the mistakes that I made trying to go have him take my spiritual path because I thought that was the right one. And what I found out in here is we all have a different path. We all have our little paths, and God's in charge of that, and I'm not. So that's all I had to say about that.
One time Diane decided she was really going to do something to make a big difference in my spiritual life. She had signed up to go on this pilgrimage to Yugoslavia, to Medjugorje. And so I agreed to go. And this is before I got sober, by the way. And it didn't go well. You know, it was a communist country. They only had two kinds of beer. It was in a green bottle and a brown bottle. That was it. And it was hot, but it did, you know, it carried the message. And all these people that were there, I mean, they journey up this mountain barefooted every day to honor, do what they do, and in silence. And I was the only guy walking along on the path with my headphones on, listening to Led Zeppelin, taking painkillers. But you know what? The light was pulling me then. I didn't know that. It was about 4 years before I got sober. The light was pulling me then, but it didn't seem like I was responding. But all that stuff helped. All that stuff helped. We want to do some questions. You got any?
No, go on to 3.
We're going to quit.
It's 30 minutes. We just
What?
had 30 minutes. Oh, what time is it?
All right.
Yeah, I think do one
Like I
more.
said,
Nobody's in charge.
nobody's in charge. That's right.
Just
All right.
suggestion.
Tradition 3. In AA, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. In Al-Anon, the relatives of alcoholics, when gathered together for mutual aid, may call themselves an Al-Anon family group, provided that, as a group, they have no other affiliation. The only requirement for membership is that there be a problem with alcoholism in a relative or friend. And so in our relationship, the third tradition equates to the basic requirement for a good relationship is a mutual desire to live, work, and grow spiritually together. Like I said, we're individuals. We work better as a team. We've realized that. One thing I told Diane some years ago, and I really mean this, and I get to bring this up again. We only have one life. This is the only life we have. We've had a life together for a long time. But I told her one time, I love you so much that if I ever get to a point where I'm holding you back to live the full life you want, I'd be willing to let you go. Now, I don't want that, but I love her enough to do that, you know? And I don't want to hold her back in any way. I want to give her space to grow as an individual. You know, there was a time I thought because we're married, we're supposed to be joined at the hip and do everything together and all that stuff. And the reality of it is we're really different. She likes a lot of different stuff than I do. I mean, she exercises in various ways all day long, every day it seems like. You know, I want to fish and watch drag racing, you know. But we complement each other on that. And we've struggled over stuff, just silly stuff. And I want to, we argue over closet space. Every now and then my closet space will get smaller, and I've got to fight for my little niche. One time we actually went to a counselor for this. I don't know how long I was sober, but we got into it, and really when it boiled down to was that she had pictures of her family, all her Christmas cards and Christmas pictures on our refrigerator. And she has a huge family. She's one of 12. And there were all those, and there weren't any pictures of my family on there. And I took offense to that I thought, you know, this refrigerator is your family, not our family. And of course she thinks, well, you don't like my family. You know, and we go through this kind of stuff. We actually went to a counselor over that. You know, and so now we have a separate, it's not on the refrigerator anymore. That was a compromise. We have it over in one side of the kitchen, but it's everybody's family. So that's kind of stuff we go over. And I'll hold on to, I mean, I just dig my heels in on stuff. Not long after I got sober, we have this hot tub and a little deck outside of our bedroom. And I built this big high fence next to the deck to screen our neighbors out, you know. And so Diane said, you know, that old fence is ugly. I really want to tear that down. And I'm thinking, no, I want to, you know, when I come in here, I want to get out there and have my privacy. I like the fence and all that. She said, hey, it's just ugly, you know, we need to take it down. And we get in this real tiff about it. And so I take it to my sponsor. And I said, look, Buff, you know, and I sold him the best bill of goods I could. You know, I'm out there naked on my hot tub and on the deck, and I don't want people looking at me and all this stuff. And finally he said, Michael, just take the fence down. And I went, you're kidding me. He said, no, just take the fence down. Just do what Diane wants for a change. So I followed directions of my sponsor. So I get a sledgehammer, and I go out there, and I'm beating this fence down, man. I'm busting it to pieces. And I just know when I look over there, I'm going to be staring right at my next door neighbor's house. And instead, since I'd put that fence up over the years, we have this bamboo on the side of our house, and all this bamboo had grown up like 32 feet high. Couldn't even see my neighbor's house. And there I was sitting there ready to just do battle, you know, over a fence, you know. And I realized what an idiot I am about some of those things. And I'm just, it's a constant give and take all the time. Over a period of time, we've tried to look at and remove old ideas. And I have a lot of old ideas. I'm just born with the way our family did things and all that stuff, and she had the way her family did things. And we finally got down, we've got 2 old ideas that have really haunted us for a long time, and I think we're finally over. But when it gets right down to it, Diane's worst fear is that I'm going to leave her for a younger woman. I mean, that's her old idea. And my old idea is she's going to leave me and take all the money. You know? And in the back of our mind, that was always there. And that lasted for a long, long time. But we finally said, that's just not true. We're going to stay together. So we got to get rid of these old ideas. Your turn.
Oh, no, I don't have anything on that one.
You don't?
I think you covered it all.
All right.
So
you want to do some questions for
Yeah, does anybody have any questions before we take a break? There's a mic up here. It's a handheld, so we'll give it to you.
And by the way, we're going to be here all weekend. If you have some questions you don't want to bring up or something or want to talk to us, feel free to do it, and Diane will answer them all for you.
No. No. Does anybody have any questions? If not, we'll just take maybe a 10-minute break that will come back at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Is that right? So.